What was the motivation behind this?
Well, the thought was that since songs, music is so much a part of the way Christmas unfolds, that perhaps to look at some of the songs that actually are there at the time of the incarnation, there might be a connection.
Mm-hmm.
So whether there is or there isn't remains to be seen, but that was the idea.
You went back and took what are lyrics from Christmas songs from the Gospel of Luke, the Gospel of Matthew, right?
Yeah.
And did meditation on those lyrics.
Well, yeah, I had actually, through the course of doing the Gospels here at Parkside, I had done, if you like, the exposition of that, and then to take that work and then get by with a little help from my friends, and reduce it and try and put it together in a way that is accessible. That was the idea.
So if you were explaining this book to somebody, if you had an overview of it, what would you say?
Here's a book that comes at the story of Jesus from 4 different angles, essentially from 4 different songs. That the angel sang a song identifying him, the response of Mary to the birth of Jesus, and it's a take on who Jesus is and why he came from the framework of the lyrics.
You begin the book by saying nobody announces that the Christmas season is here. We just pick it up from the music we hear in the malls. There's a powerful connection between music and our understanding of Christmas, isn't there?
Yeah, there really is. And what I find quite fascinating in that regard is that many of the songs that are being played in the malls are, if you like, politically incorrect.
Yeah.
That the folks, the proprietors of the mall, are relying on the fact that nobody knows the lyrics, but perhaps they identify the tunes. But I mean, a song like "O Little Town of Bethlehem" is profoundly gospel in its orientation, and so yeah, I actually think it's a wonderful way to engage people through the song. Someone says, "I like that song." Say, "Have you ever considered what it says?" And then go from there.
To be walking through a mall and hear "Late in time, behold him come, offspring of the virgin's womb."
Yeah.
You kind of do a double take, like, where am I?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Which again is a testimony to the sort of the residual impact of Christianity within an increasingly secular culture. I mean, as much as we attempt to remove it, if you like, from the top down, it just keeps bubbling from the bottom up.
Do you imagine that the songs we see recorded in Scripture had melody to them? Did Mary's Magnificat ever get put to music, or did she sing it when she said it? What do you imagine?
That's a good question, because I've never really, I guess we're so influenced by the way it has now come down to us. But at least initially they're poetic, that there is a lyrical form to them. They're not just the statement of facts. And so, yeah, maybe.
And why would it be that under the inspiration of the Spirit, God's Spirit would move someone to respond with a song rather than just with a declaration or a statement?
Well, it's interesting, because in the Old Testament, the both songs, both of joy and of lament, are so clearly a huge part of that. That you get it as early as Exodus, don't you? Where Miriam is playing her tambourine, and she obviously is exuberant about things. You have the same sort of thing with David and the negative reaction of some to, again, his exuberance. And so it's not surprising that Hebrew flavor of the pilgrimage of God's people, of a singing people, either singing songs of sadness, or we hung our harps on the willow trees because we didn't think we could sing the Lord's song in a foreign land. I think it would be a strange thing if we came out of the intertestamental period and all of a sudden it did come out as sort of declarations. People would say, well, where did that come from?
And there is something about the way music connects head and heart, that it's a different kind of expression of praise to God when we join our voices in song.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the gifts of God to us, isn't it? Is music itself. That creation itself is musical.
Mm-hmm.
That, if you sit out on a quiet night, you realize that there is so much written into creation. And you have that almost in the entry of Jesus into Jerusalem, don't you? When he says, well, if they were quiet, then the stones would cry out. Right. So that really humanity just echoes, if you like, the praise of creation for the Creator.
I love the fact that a book like this is something I could take next door and give to my next door neighbors, no matter who they were or whatever their spiritual frame of mind is, because at Christmas time we have the opportunity to be bolder about the gospel than we might feel at other times of the year.
I think that's absolutely true. And again, because the context creates something of that for us, because as much as we live in an environment that seeks to secularize the whole thing, everybody knows that at the heart of this we have to reckon somehow or another with this Jesus of Nazareth, that the coins in our pockets testify to his historic reality, and the songs that have become part and parcel of our lives, at least many of them, again point back to him. So yeah, we do have it's a real missed opportunity not to seize on it.
Did you have someone or some group of people in mind when you sat down to write this? Were you thinking of believers? Were you thinking of unbelievers? Were you thinking of people who have grown up in a particular culture with Christmas?
No, I think, as with most things, when I'm teaching, I'm always thinking, well, hopefully this is helping the person who believes to become equipped for doing this kind of thing, and hopefully the person who doesn't believe is intrigued by what's being said enough to give it further consideration. So I think in the book as well, it's just that kind of two-pronged approach.
Mm-hmm. Why did you feel like a book like this was something that would be helpful? We all know the Christmas story. What does this bring to light that might be obscured otherwise?
Probably it doesn't bring anything new to the table. I think maybe just the line of approach is what will be hopefully intriguing in part to some people to think along a different line, so that it's not starting in a sort of didactic way. Have you ever considered this? Did you consider that? But it's more along the lines of why did these angelic visitors do what they did and say what they said? And how does this bear any relevance to our lives? But I mean, hey, a story about peace on earth and goodwill towards those upon whom God's favor rests in a world that is increasingly fragmented and broken. Mm-hmm. And not only on the big level, but on the local level of people's lives and marriages and dealing with their children and everything else. Hopefully, it can sneak up on them.
What do you hope readers will take away from reading a book like this?
I hope that it will lead them right to, not simply to the cradle in Bethlehem, but to the cross at Calvary, and to, the reality of the fact that, as the message declared, unto you is born this day a Savior in the house of David. He is Christ the Lord. And that's the objective in our putting together of the book.
Yeah. I can imagine readers not wanting to rush through it all in one reading, but taking a chapter at a time, maybe on the various Sundays in Advent, or maybe just as a part of their daily devotions, read a chapter, and then just take time to reflect rather than try to digest it all in one sitting. It would be good, I would think, just to take it in bites.
Yeah, it wouldn't be a big bite to eat it all, though. I mean, let's be honest. It's not going to weigh anybody down. It's not going to weigh down their briefcase. But no, I think there is value in that. I think if you crash from one to the next, it might not have the same impact, in the same way that you would read a poem or read or enjoy a song. When I go through a playlist on an album, I will often go through it pretty quickly, and then I'll go back and play and replay songs until I get the feel of them. And it's the kind of thing that a family could do, where at the evening time after a meal or whatever, they could read a chapter and think it through.
So while we're talking about Christmas playlists, what would be on yours?
Oh, my Christmas playlist? Well, very spiritual things like Grandma Got Run Over by a Reindeer. I'll Be Home for Christmas. That kind of stuff.
Nat King Cole's on there, right?
Yeah, I have all of that. And then, but actually, I'm a huge fan of Christmas carols, to tell you the truth. I really, really like Christmas, and so I'm familiar with them. I regret that there are some that we sang in Britain that have never really made it into the top 10 over here. And they're not always the easiest things to sing either, but the lyrical content of them in most cases is very, very helpful.
Well, and I wish more people would go beyond the first verse of A Christmas Carol and commit to memory the third and fourth verses of some of these carols. The theology is rich.
Absolutely.
And I don't know how many folks realize that maybe one of the most popular Christmas carols sung every year is actually not about the first Advent, it's about the second Advent. Joy to the World is really more about the second coming of Christ than it is the first coming.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
If I was going to give a book like this to an unbelieving friend, any tips you'd give me on how to approach that conversation, or what I ought to say in giving them a gift like this?
Could say, my friend wrote this book. I'm not sure it's really any good. Could you read it?
Read it and tell me what you think.
Yeah. Could you read it and let me know? No, I mean, I think with most little books like that, the line is to be able to say, here in short order is a treatment of a well-worn subject, and I'd love for you to read it, and we could maybe talk about it.
I think that idea I'd love to follow up after you've read it.
Yeah.
That really does give us an opportunity later on to say, do you have any thoughts about that book?
Right, and also you find out whether the person ever read it.
Yeah. Right. Are you concerned about how Christmas is increasingly moving away from its spiritual roots in our culture?
Well, yeah, it's a great sadness to see, huge displays of secularism in Times Square, predominating. But I think in many cases it's just a reminder that the darker the light is, the darker the day is, the less light that you really need in order to penetrate that darkness. And I actually am excited about the opportunities for the church that will take seriously the claims of Jesus and be engagingly bold about saying, have you really thought this out?
So you mentioned earlier the evangelistic opportunity that Christmas gives us, and earlier this year on radio you did a series all about crossing the barriers and engaging in evangelistic dialogue with friends. Most of us feel uncomfortable with that.
Right.
Coach us at Christmas on just how we can comfortably have those kinds of conversations.
Well, I think, as we've said already, Christmas has sort of established the agenda for us. In other points in the year, you have to sort of be a little creative, a little perhaps strategic in finding your way into the context. But here you're able to respond to things that are going on, whatever it is. I mean, I noticed you say to your friend that St. Aloysius has got an amazing nativity scene out there. Did you see that thing? And the person says, yeah, I saw it. Do you ever think why they put that there? Mm-hmm. And now the person may come back and say, yeah, it's this, it's that, the next thing. But at least it's third party to us, it's objective to us. We're both now talking about something that's over there. And often we will then be put in the position where someone will reciprocate. They'll return the question. Well, I mean, why would anybody ever do that?
Yeah.
Well then, did you ever sing the carol that says, "He came down to earth from heaven, who is God and Lord of all, and his shelter was a stable and his cradle was a stall"? Do you remember singing that when you were at school? The person says, "Yeah, but I never had a clue what it meant. I don't even remember what it was. What did you say it was again?" He said, "Well, it actually says that God invaded our time-space capsule." I mean, that's the claim. Do you realize how crazy that is, unless it's true? That kind of thing.
Speaking of crazy, I think one reason we tend to shy away from talking about Christmas is we're afraid somebody's going to go, "You believe that virgin birth stuff? You believe angels in the sky? I mean, come on, you're a reasonable, rational person. You can't really believe that, can you?"
Yeah. Well, there's a number of ways, of course, we can go at that. And the way I usually approach it is say, well, let's hang on for just a minute and say this. The real issue is this Jesus who came and lived alive from the dead? Did the resurrection happen? Is there justification for that? If we are able to say, yeah, there's enough for us to work on there, then let's come back and consider these things. But if Jesus, of course, was buried in a Palestinian tomb, AD whatever, and the whole thing collapsed at that point, really questions such as angelic visitation and virgin births are completely irrelevant. But I think we have to be bold enough to say, yeah, I do believe these things, and I'd love for us to continue to talk about why one would ever believe these things. And it depends how far back we start in the conversation. A God who is able to create a universe is not going to have any difficulty in doing these things. After all, we've already in our lifetime proved that it is possible for us to produce babies in all kinds of ways that 50 or 100 years ago were never ever conceived. People said it's not possible to do that. Well, if we are able to be as creative as we are to this point, presumably the creator of the universe is allowed to do what he chooses to do in whatever way he chooses to do it.
I heard someone say once, we believe a lot crazier things than just that.
Yeah.
I mean, if you want to explore the crazy, there's a lot crazy that we believe.
Yeah, we got a whole ton of them.
What do you think are the misconceptions that unbelieving friends have about the birth of Jesus or about the Christmas season? Do you think they have the story as it's presented biblically, or do you think they imagine things that just aren't a part of the story at all?
Oh, I'm sure there's bits and pieces added to it in their minds. I think probably I would say that the big disconnect is what I call the Harry Belafonte disconnect. That man will live forevermore because of Christmas Day, so that you've got a complete disconnect between Jesus as a baby in Bethlehem and Christ as a savior on a cross. And I think that is probably where the biggest lack of understanding is to be found. And also I think that is why it's relatively easy, particularly for men, excuse me, to sort of dispense with the thing as a sort of a childish thing or a children's thing or a thing for people who are not really very thoughtful. There's something about a baby and it came a long time ago and it's over with. But no, they can't be dismissed that easily, because this Jesus then began to say some of the most outlandish things that anybody could ever imagine being said. And so what we have to do is try and put all the pieces in the jigsaw puzzle into position so that what forms up is a full orb picture of Jesus as presented in the New Testament.
When we try to broach the subject of Jesus at Christmas time with unbelieving family members, it can be particularly challenging. Any advice for us there?
Well, I think many times in these family gatherings, which, they can be fraught for all kinds of reasons, can't they? I remember there's a famous movie that began with the man having just an amazing rage. I think it was a Thanksgiving movie, but the great line was, "You cut the toiki?" You cut the toiki? I can't believe you cut the toiki, And then the whole family event went right out the window right there. Right. Because he was apparently the patriarch, and he cut the turkey, and no one else did, and someone did it before he got there, and the whole thing. So I don't know that we need any theology to throw into that mix to get things completely gone. I think Christian deportment, a sense of a genuine affection, love, engagement, particularly with family members with whom we haven't spent a lot of time. I'm not a fan of, this is my great moment now. I'm the only one that really understands the Christmas message. The first time there's a lull in the conversation, I'm going to step right in and, that would be my advice. No, I wouldn't do that. I would say, deal in that context in such a way that it will be quite appealing for somebody to say, Bob, you know that I don't believe what you believe, but I'm not sure I've ever fully understood why it is you believe what you believe. Could you tell me what that is? And now you have an opportunity because you're on the receiving end, as opposed to, excuse me, someone banging a teaspoon on the cup. I'd just like to announce, yeah, I would say stay away from that.
Can you think of anyone, friend, family member, maybe people at your home church here at Parkside who the Christmas season has been the time of year that God has brought them from death to life?
Yeah, actually, quite often, and it's one of the reasons that some of our people are such great fans of, Christmas evangelistic opportunities, because again, fathers will respond to an invitation on that day that may not come on another. I like the music, and what harm can there be in that?
Right.
And actually, one of our elders was converted at a Christmas concert, probably, 34 years ago or more. And he came as a sort of nice, well-respected individual in the community, and it never once occurred to him that what was actually involved in this was that Jesus had come to save his people from their sins, and he realized that although he was a nice person and was a fan of the idea that a good God rewards nice people if they do their best, then all of a sudden, right into the midst of that, came this cradle and a cross, and God used that just to open his eyes and change him, and so he's a big fan of Christmas outreach.
Christmas in Scotland different than Christmas in America?
Oh yeah, I mean, depends how high up in the nation you go. I know you like golf, but we just drove into Dornoch not so long ago, my brother-in-law and I, and we're past the primary school, and I said to Brian, you know that the headmaster of this school was removed from his position as headmaster for putting a Christmas tree in the vestibule.
At the school?
At the school. But that he was removed by the religious people, not by the irreligious people. He was removed by the religious people who would regard the celebration of Christmas as a pagan celebration.
Oh my.
Yeah. So it was the Free Church of Scotland that put pressure on him to get him out of there because they don't want that kind of influence. And in Scotland, in between the wars, Christmas Day wasn't a holiday. So English people got Christmas Day as a holiday, but Scots, no.
So did you celebrate in your home growing up?
Yeah, well, because I was fortunate enough to be born in 52. So, and also I'm not sure I don't know what my dad would have done with that in any case. But no, but Christmas for me was, I don't have any of the dreadful concerns that people have about, well, Santa Claus is a bad guy and it's about Jesus, it's not about Santa. I mean, in our church, we had a huge big Santa Claus that came and gave out all the gifts to the children, and we sang jingle bells like there was no tomorrow. And so in my mind, it always intrigues me that people say, well, the children will grow up so confused, they won't know. I don't think we're giving them enough credit. They know who the fat guy is underneath there. That's Uncle Bill. Who, they saw him. his son sticking his whiskers on, and they know that somehow or another that's a different deal from the Jesus thing you're giving me. And so I've never, I for right or for wrong, I've loved Christmas and every part of it.
Is there a present you received before you were 15 that stands out as a memorable Christmas present?
I think the first really memorable Christmas present I had was an Oris watch, and we had Christmas presents, and we opened all these Christmas presents, and then I remember my mother saying, maybe there's something else, you never know, then maybe there might be something somewhere. And then we began to look around, and I pulled out from underneath a chair just a small box, and it had this watch in it. I wish to this day I had that watch, because by now it's a collector's piece. But I think, that just the surprise of that, the unexpected nature of it, and it's one of the reasons I've loved watches, I think, ever since I was 7.
This is a hard time of year for some folks.
Mm-hmm.
Just talk about how you would counsel someone who finds this a discouraging or depressing time of year.
Yeah, many people do. People who either because of association with events in their lives that have fallen around that time. I think it's particularly hard where people have lost loved ones during that kind of celebratory season. I think the real counsel is to those of us who are in a community like that, to be alert and to be on the lookout for folks who either begin to be slightly withdrawn or seem to find it difficult to enter wholeheartedly into that. So I think my first thing is to myself, be on the lookout for people like that, because there are more of them than we realize. For the person himself, I want to say, I know that your temptation is to draw away and to hold back. My job is to reach out to you. Your job is, if you like, to, against your better instinct, to say, oh yes, okay, I will come. And then hopefully in that environment, then some of the sadness might be at least mitigated, certainly not erased.
You've had some notable theologians who have written commendations for some of your previous writing. You want to tell everybody who wrote a piece on the back of this book?
Well, apparently somebody called Alice Cooper.
Alice Cooper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who I think has more tattoos than I have, which wouldn't be difficult because I don't have any. It just takes one. And I guess school's out for summer, and Alice is in for Christmas.
Uh-huh.
But fascinatingly, I was not the person who thought of Alice, because I just wouldn't. But when his pastor made contact with him on a tour in Denmark, he announced that he listens to Truth for Life on a daily basis, and so he would be very happy to do what we asked him to do. So it's really very nice.
So you want to say Merry Christmas to Alice?
And Merry Christmas to Alice Cooper.
And everybody else.
And to Patty Heaton, who also similarly out of Hollywood did the same thing. Yeah. So I'm very thankful.
Yes. So this is Alistair's new book. It's called Christmas Playlist, and it's available now in stores, or you can order online.